Welcome, Wargamers, to the thunderous plains of Aya, because today we are talking all about the Wadroon Chieftain. I promised this video when I did my last hobby progress, paint-along we're doing here with the Conquest stuff. I talked about how the Chieftain being released at Adepticon completely disrupted my paint-along league plans. We're going to talk about why, because I love this dude. He is the latest orc hero, or I should say Wadroon hero, to lead your orc army across the unforgiving lands in Conquest. And so we're going to talk about what he represents in the lore, and then talk about, obviously showing pictures of the model and stuff, and then going through his rules and factoring in what does he bring to the Wadroon as a faction. I'm not going to spoil this. He is my favorite of their leader options. But realistically, we're going to go through it together, and the question I want you to answer in the comments is this dude as cool as Doug seems to think he is? Now, one thing I'd like to add up top here is if you like this video and you're interested in playing Wadroon or anything with Conquest that I cover here on the channel, you can save 10% on all your purchases for this entire game and give the channel a tip at no cost by using the affiliate link down below. Every time you use it, big or small, a little portion of it goes to supporting me, my wife, our cats, everything. Thank you so much to everyone who's used it up until now. It's life-changing stuff, and I appreciate every bit of it. One thing I also wanted to note here really quickly is that I am now a part of the Goonhammer network. If you're not familiar, if you play Conquest and you're not really in kind of the Warhammer sphere, Goonhammer is a fan-run site that started off covering a lot of tactical stuff for Warhammer, but they've expanded into just about every game, and me and two other creators are really trying to push Conquest over on that site for written tactical blogs, not just video like I do here. So go check out the Goonhammer network and see some awesome content there for you. Now, for those of you who are new to Conquest or the faction, the Wadroon are the orcs of the Conquest universe. They started life as a science experiment by the Spires, another faction that exists in the game, and in their harrowing history, they broke free and began developing their own culture and tribes and traditions and so on. One of the things that makes them unique, at least aesthetically, and it really is represented in the model we're going to talk about, is they quickly learned to subdue their natural environment. They had no context for anything, and they were just suddenly dropped into a crazy world. Well, right next to their place of creation is a vast wilderness, forest, desert, all these kinds of things, lots of biomes in an area in the far east reaches of the Conquest world. So just being suddenly dropped, they had to reinvent the wheel for everything to build a society. And so that's why we see such cool bone armor that they're fashioning, like bone and bamboo. It's also where they get their most unique aspect, which is the domestication, in quotes, of dinosaurs. Orcs riding dinosaurs is the selling point of this army. Orcs on T-Rexes, orcs on Velociraptors, orcs on Triceratops, orcs on Brontosaurus, a bunch of little dudes like the start from Jurassic Park 2 eating the tiny girl in Mexico. It's got everything you could want. And so in the context of the lore, what does the Chieftain do? Well, the big thing is, as we talked about in the dedicated Wadroon videos, I'm going to kind of just steal a few highlights from there. The Wadroon really are a matriarchal society. They are led by one of their four original kind of test subject creations, the blueprints for what Wadroon were supposed to be, and it is a female, so they are a matriarch society. One of the most notable heroes they have available to them is the War Queen. That's going to be your general, generally speaking. So what does the Chieftain do? Well, anytime the tribe needs to split its forces, there's going to be a chieftain there. So if the queen takes, say, the main fighting party, the army, out for war, the chieftain could stay home and make sure the tribe is defended on the home front. They can pull together raiding parties and things like that, attack, hunting parties, whatever they need to do. Or if they went with the War Queen, as they often do, this is how you get flanking forces. Think of them almost as lieutenants. They're sub-commanders, they have authority. Anyone underneath them follows them without question. But whereas the War Queen represents both a religious control, a government control, and a military one, the Chieftain just sticks to military actions. The point is, it's not like a leadership role in the same way as the others. It's more out of necessity or tactical requirements than anything else. However, chieftains are chosen from among their tribe because the structure of the Wadroon is a lot of democracy, a lot of tribal democracy, we'll call it that, where a lot of officials are elected. Everybody has to vote. Who provided the most for us? Who has the most honor, the most devotion to their cult or the tribe? These are the Wadroon that are elected to be chieftains. The tribe puts forward, here's a warrior of renown who will follow your orders, and we will listen to them unto death, and then the War Queen will, pass or fail them. And so the thing to kind of get here is they're not viewed as shift managers, right? Like a sub management thing really far down the pyramid. No, they're supreme leaders. Anyone who is underneath them for whatever reason, flanking force, raiding party, defense, whatever, they have absolute authority. And now we're going to move over to the shared screen and talk about the rules for the Chieftain. Okay, why did he disrupt my army painting plans? So let's go through this bit by bit here. He's got a movement of 5, volley 0, clash 3, 5 attacks, 5 wounds, 3 resolve, 3 defense, and 0 evasion. Not the most stellar stat line. It does make more sense if you contextualize it with his lore of like, he's not necessarily like a god of war. He's just more of an elite tribe, and it actually does place him pretty well next to veterans as a unit. So I kind of like that. A little mechanical storytelling as well. And he is medium, which will matter for the purposes of capping objectives and stuff like that. For his special rules, very light. He has Cleave 2, which is fantastic, as there are a ton of ways to buff this up with artifacts, masteries, that kind of stuff. Then, of course, the warband cults and chants can really ramp up melee prowess. So there's a lot of cool things there. Clash 3 and Cleave 2 are good stats for this particular hero. The warband cults, if you're unfamiliar with Wadroon, I'm going to do a dedicated video talking about the way chants work, but essentially you just pick one of these and anything in his warband counts as being famine, death, or war when you're doing your war chants, but they don't cost anything. And then he has 2 options for ways of war. So what does that mean? Well, when you buy him, you can get one of 2 of these different bonus rules, and they're pretty cool. So the first one, Way 1. This regiment and the character stand it's currently attached to gains the Bellowing Shout draw event. So let's check that out. Bellowing Shout draw event, you can place a Conquest chant marker in the sequence. If you are someone who's going to really flex the uses of the chant mechanic to really land some devastating hits, make units swing way above their weight class, this gives you an incredibly interesting tactical option. Now you can accelerate how quickly you gain chant markers, and specifically, this one is a Conquest marker. Now, if your warband is, say, from, we'll say, the Cult of War, you activate the unit, they throw a Cult of War token into the chant sequence. As then a draw event, you can then place a chant marker for Conquest in there. Well, all of a sudden, you have chants from 2 different things. Now you can use the Conquest chant tree. So it's very interesting. It opens up some cool possibilities. I would say that this is definitely the Way 1 is an army-wide buff. We're going to come back to this point towards the end. Because even if you just take the Chieftain and the cheapest unit that he can go with, right? Just a unit of Braves. Between his Supremacy ability, which we'll get to next, and then the ways, or I should say the Bellowing Shout, specifically Way 1, allow you to really do a lot for your army without investing hardly anything in him. Now, what is Way number 2? This regiment and the character stand it's currently attached to gains the Double Time draw event. If you don't know Double Time, if this regiment performs 2 march actions, it can make a free third one, which gives them an incredible amount of speed. If you were to put him in, say, a heavy unit, they could rocket up the board very aggressively. Come to think of it, I don't know if he has access to, but there's things you can do in terms of army construction. But the point is, whatever you put him with, he will be able to get them up the board. The way that I look at these things is Way 1 is an army-wide buff. Way 2 is a unit buff. If you want the Chieftain to be a battering ram of destruction and you invest a lot of points in him, and also the regiment he's with, this is a cool option for ensuring that they are delivered to their target. Whereas if you want your Chieftain to stand back and kind of be a buff piece for the army, Way 1, where you can now control the tempo of chant markers, I think is probably a stronger choice. It's just a matter of what you want. But those things are about context. They're not the reason that I want the Chieftain. The reason I want the Chieftain is his Supremacy ability. Shock Assault. Okay? Let me just read this off here. All friendly regiments gain the Shock special rule. Period. Okay, all friendly regiments is a very important thing in Wadroon because you have a divide between Wadroon and dinosaurs. Dinosaurs don't receive some of the buffs that the Wadroon can do, like chant markers and stuff like that. Dinosaurs don't chant. This is a very important exception where dinosaurs get this too. It's a friendly regiment. That's incredible. So we'll just continue with our description. So everything gets this. If they already have the Shock special rule, they gain Flurry, which is rerolling hits, during any activation in which they perform a successful charge action. This Supremacy ability is always considered to be active. So let's take a look here. Shock. When this regiment performs a successful charge action, this stand gains the benefit of Inspired as a special rule twice, applied one after the other. This is an exception to special rules and multiple instances of them not stacking. So normally when you charge, you get inspired and you get +1 to your clash. This is +2, and it's army wide. So let's take the crappiest unit in our list, the Braves, which, I mean, they're not the crappiest. They just have the least amount of control over them, but they come in at clash 2, okay? Hunting Pack is probably not terribly dissimilar. Yep, clash 2. Both of these, when they charge, are going to be at clash 4. The Hunting Pack clash 4 with 6 attacks is cool. It has tons of speed options. It's not going to charge turn 1 because nothing can unless you have Bloodlust like the Braves do. But like realistically, they can be super gross for no reason other than they charge. In fact, there is not a single unit on this roster that does not immediately massively benefit from having 2 clash. Now, of course, that does go away the following turn when they're stuck in. But I mean, come on, clash 4, 5 attacks on Raptor Riders, that's awesome. Even if you just use them as individual, somewhat disposable missiles, regiments like the Hunting Pack stuff can swing above their weight class. Again, they don't have cleave, which is a big deal, but when you think about Raptor Riders, right, they're shooting in with their armor-piercing 1 spears, not the best shots, volley 2, but when they charge in, fluid formation allows them to do a lot of great charging and maneuverability, going in at clash 4, 5 attacks, with flurry, naturally. Again, remember, if you already have shock, then you gain flurry. Well, they are coming in at clash 4, re-rolling failed hits. That's so cool. They have both rules. For me, realistically, I like these guys because, or I like the Chieftain rather, because it makes the Wadroon play the way that I enjoy playing orcs in other fantasy properties. By that I mean, I love bonuses to the charge. I love being incentivized to be as aggressive as possible, and frankly, I like hitting on 4s rather than 2s, so that's pretty simple. You have to also remember that these things do stack with buffs that you get from your chant markers. You can't be inspired a 3rd time, that's totally a different thing, but there are tons of buffs within the chant sequence that will add stuff like cleave, flurry, deadly blade, stuff like that. Now, as for his retinue options, rather, when it comes to, not retinue, I don't know why I was saying that, his warband options, and what he can bring, he does have some unique things. As in, right now, as far as I know, he's the only hero that can bring veterans, the unit that came out with him. They kind of act as like the elite cohort of the Wadroon, and while I do want some eventually, I'm not in a rush to get any right now. I have so many dudes to paint that it's not the last thing on my mind is buying more guys. I bought the Chieftain because it's a $25 purchase that like changes the fundamental nature of the army, but I don't need more dudes just standing around. Even though veterans are awesome. I wanted to point that out though, because anytime there's a bottleneck for a very particular unit, if you like that unit, it's important to showcase that. So he gets access to veterans as a mainstay. He also has blooded and braves. Those are the 2 basic troop options we have right now. I see a lot of people talking about running him with blooded because they have a lot of cool officer options that make him really gross. Braves are an interesting one. If you want to go dirt cheap and just have him be an army buffer that's not meant to go anywhere near combat, sticking him with a minimum size thing of blades is a nice little 4 stand brick that amplifies what the army wants to do everywhere. For his restricted choices, though, we have a bunch of cool options that are on the horizon for us. We have the Drum Beast, big brontosaurus looking thing. The Coatl, which I don't think that one's been shared or seen or anything like that. Haven't heard anything about that one. There's the Raptor Riders, which we talked about, of course. Thunder Riders, which were previewed here recently. Triceratops heavy cavalry, think of that. And then Warbred, which are sort of the heavy brute version of the basic infantry. But what I like is you get access to all your good mainstays. Blooded and veterans are awesome. Braves, I like Braves, but also I know that a lot of players don't. So like Braves, if you don't know, if there's someone near them, they have to take a leadership test basically, and if they fail, they charge it. You don't get control. If they're in range, they have to try and charge things provided that they fail their leadership. And some people don't like that. Me, I love it, because when you've got shock assault here, you want to be charging every single second you get anyway. Is it dumb? Yeah. Is it what I'm here for? Absolutely. Now, I went over this just a little bit ago, but the way that I envision an army fundamentally designed around the Chieftain is not just a whole bunch of MSU stuff that charges, because I don't want to give up kill points that easily, but rather having an emphasis on stuff like the raptors, possibly even taking like a, what do you call it, the predator, and having raptors and hunting packs. Just maybe like one warband that's sole mission is to take full advantage of this guy's shock assault. And then the rest of the army can function kind of as normal, knowing that they get that bonus as well. Because I feel like for the ones that I'm really focused on shock assault, I'm less hyper focused on the chant sequence stuff. But if I had a warband that made the most of this, and then the rest of the army was all about the chant sequence, also benefiting from the Chieftain's Way 1, which throws a Conquest marker into the chant sequence, like, that's a fantastic use of abilities. It's spreading out what he's able to do. His force multiplier is now across every part of the army, but I'm not falling for the fallacy of making everything about him. I just need 4 units to absolutely scare the crap out of my opponent. Also, this is an Apex Predator. I want to see Big Chungus here with shock assault. Anyway, friends, those are my thoughts on the Chieftain. I'm very excited to get this guy painted and on the table, as I mentioned in my paint along milestone 2 video. Thank you so much for everyone who's been watching that. Like I said, if you want to jump in with Conquest, I do have a way of saving you money with the affiliate code down below. It doesn't cost you anything, saves you quite a bit of coin. And I hope you just join me, because both Conquest, Last Argument of Kings, the rank and flank, and First Blood, the more skirmishy kind of variant, are just fantastic games. If you have any suggestions on how to get the most out of the Chieftain, like cool combos that you have found, please leave them down below, because I'm not someone who can just read rules and kind of come up with that, but I would love some feedback and assistance. This is the dude I want to make work. I always pin the most helpful comment, so thank you everybody for chipping in, and I will catch you in my next Conquest video. Happy wargaming!